Okay, what is a bias map? So a bias map is a concept that it's in my my book. I could say my new book, but it's the only book I have so far. So here it is, so the book is tentatively called "Most Businesses Fail in the First 5 Minutes," and that was the shameless plug. You knew it was coming. So go to positiontowinbook.com, and if you want to get notified about the official release, it'll be there. But I wanted to talk about so a bias map. A bias map is the reason that we can be in a room, go to a bank, go to a theater, and be with a group of other humans is because in a certain level we share a certain concept, a consistent collective concept of the world, right? You know what I'm doing, I know what you're doing, and then we kind of predict each other's behavior to a certain extent. The reason why all those people can drive, we can drive in a highway, in a street, is because we have common conceptions of what driving is. If we have to drive up to a street and have to wonder, do we drive on the left side or do we drive on the right side? That could be bad, right? If you've ever thought about this is kind of interesting. You can be on a 2-lane road going really fast. I've traveled really fast, and especially like in farm roads up in farmlands here and close to Dallas, and you could be going 60 miles an hour, and the car isn't. There's another car coming, and you guys just whizzle by, and but you gotta like really ponder about that and think, we sort of take that for granted, that look, you're gonna stay on that side of the road, I'm gonna stay on this side, and we're gonna miss each other. We're actually not gonna hit each other, right? Well, not always, right? But usually not on purpose. People fall asleep, and people get distracted, people text and drive, and we all do that. Don't do that, by the way, it's very dangerous. But for the most part, we say, look, we have this concept of the world, and we have a shared concept of the world, and so therefore you know what I'm doing, I know what I'm doing, you know what you're doing, and I know what you're doing, right? All the different things, and therefore we match, okay? So a bias map is the concept, maybe even the tacit and unconscious concept of the world, okay? Now there are many things that we share, but there are also things that we don't share, and this is why we see not only people's taste a little different or very different than ours, but also political and socioeconomical differences between people. It's because the bias map might not be the same. So if you think about, let's pretend that this is the mind of a person. This big box here, all right, is a mind. All right, and in this mind, there's a series of subcategories, and I did a big video, well, not big, but it was a 30-minute video last time on categories, and somebody told me that they didn't understand anything that I was talking about. Hey, I don't even understand what I'm talking about. But anyway, so each of these boxes is a category, okay? Now, we can get philosophical, and I tend to get philosophical, but let's not. Let's be very practical. Let's think that each of these categories, each of these boxes relate to a particular product or service or business that somebody deals with, okay? So let's just take one for an example, an easy one, okay? So there's a box here that says, it doesn't really say this, but let's just say search engines. Okay. Now, what it really says, the way this really works in the human mind is, we don't categorize things by what they are. We categorize things for the most part by what they can do. Okay? And this is because we're interested in action, we're interested in the application, we're interested in use, okay? And I've made this example before. When you have a category, for example, of a chair, okay? You might think, okay, well, a chair is this thing, it's got like a base, and it's got 4 legs, and it's got maybe a back sometimes, and then you could really start to play with that, because Okay, well, does it have to have 4 legs? Can it have 3 legs? Yeah, I've seen 3-legged chairs that they're like more like stools, but they still maybe qualify. Is a stool a chair, right? And then, well, what about 2 legs? Can it have 2 legs? Well, maybe you can have like 2 opposite legs, and then you can use your legs as the third one and kind of balance yourself so you can sit there. Can it have 1 leg? Well, I guess it kind of could. Can it have 0 legs, right? Like a pillow, like a really stiff pillow, or like a bean bag, right? Can you sit on a bean bag? And then you start to think, and you realize, well, a chair is really more like, what about a basket, right? Like can you sit on a basket? And you can, right? So a chair starts to be a little less of this definition of a chair, of all the characteristics of a chair, and something more like something you can sit on. And that's what the way the categories are. So a category like search engine is probably in the mind more like a thing that I can use to search the internet with. Okay? And you don't really care if it's a search engine. Maybe it could be another kind of thing, right? So, but then it falls into that. And then in that box in your mind, there are levels. Okay? So that's why I put the little pyramids here in all these, okay? Because they all have levels. Right? And then this is an interesting category here because it's got 3 in 1. And then this one I left empty, and that's also a reason for that. Let's see if I get to it. So, and in this inside of this box, this category in your brain, there's one thing that is at the top, and then there are maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 levels, okay? And it could be many levels, okay? Now, if you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that, if you ask them, what is the 5th search engine? When you're thinking about search engines, what is the 5th one you think about? I don't know. Most people wouldn't be able to tell you that, right? You have to really well, but let's talk about the top one, right? The one everybody maybe will think of first. If you were playing Family Feud, they'll say this is the first thing, which is maybe Google, right? And so and this really illustrates the fact that a company like Google can have such a dominant position in the market. It is not just their usability. It is not just the network effect. It is not just the complete ubiquity of this search engine, of this company in just about everybody's life. It is also the position, and most importantly, the position in the mind, which is what a bias map is. So if you have a business, if you have an idea, if you have a service, some kind of product that you want to push, what you need to gain, what you need to accomplish is that level, that top level. Right? Now, it would be ludicrous of anybody really to say, hey, I'm going to go out and compete with Google. I'm going to take that position away from them. It'd be very difficult to do, right? But what you can do is you can divide a market, right? So this is why I put this other category here with several ones, okay? And generally, this is what happens to most markets as they become more and more, I guess they have more of a legacy. Okay, so markets go through series of stages of sophistication. Okay, when a market is first, let's say discovered, for let's not use the word created, but let's say discovered. When somebody creates a product that kind of breaks the category, something apart. For example, the iPad. Right before the iPad, there was no category. Really not usable categories of tablets. Now there were tablets, but really the iPad was the one that really kind of established that. And once you have that, then you have iPads or tablets of different styles, of different things, and it starts to fragment out that way. Same thing is true in most industries. You have industries that are very legacy. They have a lot of time. For example, beer. Right at first, all you had to do is just sell beer, and you said, hey, I sell beer. And then now we have the, more and more fragmentation of all these different types of beer. Then, became imported and domestic, and then became, all the different blends. All the way to now we have microbreweries, and they're all the rage, right? You have this tiny little fractions, this tiny little fragments, and it just fragments out. This is what the markets tend to do. So you could even say that in search engine, we could fragment the thing out. So if you were really set on the idea of doing a search engine as a business, then you might want to do is you want to take a part away. The reason that there are other search engines that are very popular, for example, the second most popular search engine I believe is YouTube, right, which is also owned by Google, but didn't used to be owned by Google. They were sold to her. Google bought them. But that's another one. The third one, I believe last time I checked, was Amazon, right? And so Amazon is kind of like it's kind of a fragmentation. So if we say that search engine was this one, and then this is the category that fragments out, maybe over here is Amazon, over here on the left. And so what is that search engine? Again, this is not the way it's categorized in the brain. It would be more like, where do I find the products that I need to buy? As opposed to where do I find the information that I need to get, right? So Google is saying their mission statement is literally organize the world's information, right? That's a big, huge mission statement. And they've done a really good job. But again, you have a company that kind of takes a little section and says, look, all I want is to have this thing so you can find the products that you're looking for, right? So you wouldn't put in Amazon.com, you wouldn't say, something like, what is the national bird of, I don't know, Estonia or something. You wouldn't put that, right? Because maybe if you want to find books about it, or if you want to find, the Estonian flag, or if those kinds of things. So those are products. So it sections it out like that. But then you have a guy that is the top one, right? And then if you were to try to find new products or a place to find new products, then you might look at Etsy, you might look at eBay, right? And so they're somewhere in here too, right? In that kind of category. Okay? So that is what a bias map is. And so what you need to figure out is, well, first, a good exercise to do is to figure out your own bias maps. Now, John Paul had he took me through this years ago now. And then he said, look, this is how this all works. And we have it here. This is in chapter 2, I believe. And this is about the story of basically this book. And so, and we have a picture here, you probably can't see it, but it's a picture of the sugar bias map. So we were sitting there at a, kind of a fancy Starbucks called Starbucks Reserve. And John said, well, here, let me show you. So he grabbed the sugar packets and then he laid them out and said, which one, if you only had one of these, which one would be the one you put on your coffee? So I said, the raw sugar. He's like, well, if you didn't have raw sugar, what is the next one? Well, then I guess regular sugar. Okay, if you didn't have regular sugar, what is the next one? And then went Splenda, and then Equal, and then Sweet and Low, the last one, right, the pink one. So saccharin, which is an interesting substance, if you want to do some research about saccharin. And so that was my bias map, right? That was my order. That was my hierarchy, okay? And now, this is important. This is important because we are discriminatory creatures, okay? So when somebody says, we need to organize things, and we organize things instinctively in a hierarchy, okay? And this goes from the philosophical, from what is important in your life, what is important to be for you ontologically, what is your reason for being, right, at the top, okay? Or it could be something more mundane and simplistic, like which detergent you buy. And we were at Las Vegas, was it 2 weeks ago? And we were at this conference, and anyways, we did a lot of stuff in the conference, then we left, and we took a couple more days after the conference so we could do a post-mortem on what happened, work on some more stuff, all this stuff. And so we ended up in this Walmart, and in this Walmart, it was a little strange. You could tell the vibe was a little off. You'd be walking down the aisles, and there would be like this monitors, and you'd be able to see yourself, and you're like, okay. And then it says, smile, you're on camera. You've seen those before. But like they were like everywhere. And it was just like, wow, this is kind of weird. Anyways, so John is looking for some detergent. And so we go, and we should probably put this picture maybe on the next version of the book or something. But we were walking in the aisle to try to figure out where to buy detergent, and we see the detergent aisle, and in the corner, the Tide and the Gain are locked up. It tells you what kind of neighborhood we were at, where you have to lock up the Tide and the Gain. But then the rest were like, you could grab them. So there's a positioning lesson for you. If you are the top one, maybe the top two, depending on the market, you get to be locked up. Otherwise, just whatever. So John looks at it and he's like, hey, Gabe, doesn't it tell you something about the neighborhood when they have to lock up the Tide and the Gain? Yep, for sure. So anyway, so what you want to do is you want to make sure that that you fit somewhere in here. Now, the real power obviously is to be number one, right? But there are ways in which you don't have to be number one to position yourself. So when you think about positioning, so a lot of people think that positioning so it's like position, right? Related to position, and it is, but not in. So if I say I'm gonna position the book next to the computer, okay, and that's the location of where I'm putting the book, okay. But positioning is not only the location where you put something or you slot something, but it is also the location in which you slot something in relation to everything else, and that is the key. That might even be more key than where you put yourself, where you place yourself, where you place yourself as a person, in your career, in your business, or your product or service that you're trying to sell. So what you're trying to find out is what is the natural bias map? What is the bias map of the market that I am in? Okay, and this is very important. If you're starting a business or you already have one, the key thing is to go, okay, what if I'm selling something right now, what is it that I'm selling? All right, and who are the different guys in there, and and where do I slot myself? Am I near the top or am I near the bottom? Now most of us deal with the bottom part, okay, and when I don't mean that offensive to anybody, but we deal with most markets are already dominated by big players, okay, like even the stuff that I do. You think, okay, well, what do you do, Gabe? Well, I'm a consultant, okay, and also we're getting ready to launch a business, but I'll do an announcement about that later. So I'm a consultant, basically, right? And so who are the top guys in consulting, right? Am I near the top? And the answer is a resounding no. I am not anywhere near the top, because the top guys are big consulting companies, right? Like McKinsey, like BCG, like Bain, like Deloitte. Those are all big guys. And then there's all the little guys way down the bottom, okay? And I am one of those little guys, okay? Now, a concept that we teach in the Position to Win system is the marketing postures. And that relates to, since I am not anywhere near the top, I can't start behaving like I'm one of the top guys. I can't be like, oh yeah, somebody, I can let me go out and try to get a $200 million, a $500 million company to help them out by myself. Well, first of all, it's not going to happen, and second of all, it's not going to happen, and that's just the nature of it. So I got to understand where I fit, and when I know when I fit or where I fit, then I can do some of the things that I can do. This is why I'm doing a Facebook Live right now, because this helps me to figure out a lot of the stuff in my head to promote the book, positiontowinbook.com, and also to put some content out there that I can reuse. I can put on my YouTube channel, I can put on my website, and then I have prospects and clients that say, hey, I watched your video and I want to work with you, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. So that's the idea. So what you want to do is figure out what is the bias map of your market so you can attack it. Figure out what your bias maps are so you can figure out, okay, what is it? What are all the decisions that have already been made for me that are kind of in my head, okay? And then you can start looking at the process from the outside. Now, I want to be a positive thinker, and that most people can learn to do this, but I've actually explained this to some people and they just don't get it. And they don't get it because, just like in the video that I did before, right? The category becomes a box, and so if you're inside of the box, you literally cannot see the box because, well, you're inside of it. So you need to step out of the box to be able to see it. But if you step out of the box, it's going to be uncomfortable because, well, you're out of your box, you're out of your thing. So if you ask me what detergent you should get, I say let's go with Tide or Gain, right? Now if you say no, you can't get any of that, you'll have to get a third one. Well, now you got me thinking. Now I have to activate my decision, and now it's harder. So this is probably a concept that I need to do a completely separate video about. But making decisions costs energy, like mental energy. So there's only so many decisions that you can make in a day, and this is a fact, empirical fact. We've tested it, and it gets pretty crazy. Also, if you're a person who makes a lot of decisions, and you ever find yourself like, having to make the silly decisions like where to take the laundry, or pick it up, when to pick it up, what to order at the restaurant, you feel like you're mentally blocked, it is because of that. So the reason that our brain solves this issue of making more and more decisions, especially in this world that we get bombarded with information, is by pre-establishing the decision, by organizing things into a hierarchy. This is why bias maps are a thing. This is why bias maps work. This is why you want to be the guy outside, but it's going to be a little uncomfortable, especially if you're, imagine if you can analyze in yourself the ultimate question, which is, what is it at the top of your hierarchy of being, right? And I promise I wasn't going to get philosophical, but I can't help it. But if the only way you can look back and kind of analyze that about yourself is if you are outside of that. And if you're outside of that, you have no floor, no emotional floor. And this is actually the way this works. All of these decisions, all of these bias maps structure not only our behavior, which they do, but our emotions, because that means we don't need to think about it. That decision has already been made for us, and we don't have to stress about it. We don't have to go, well, what if this happens, and what if that happens, and what if that happens? This is why somebody injecting, some crazy substance into a product, or what people are putting on social media about somebody licking the ice cream or whatever. This breaks these down. Well, what if the ice cream, somebody did something to it? What should I do, right? And this is very, very serious, because this underpins the knowns that we think are known, or at least our mind makes them known, so that we don't have to worry about that, okay? One last bit about bias maps. So you might think the word bias, this is a bad, right? You don't want to have bias, right? And a lot of people say, well, you're biased, and that's like bad. You don't want to be called that you're biased. Well, I have news for you. We're all biased. We have to be. This is part of the nature of being human. I would say more than that. It is part of the nature of action, of being able to do anything in life. You have to be biased. You have to skew one way or another. You have to make a decision, right? So I'm not saying that all bias is good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that there are extremes, and we talked about the spectrum in a previous video, right? You can go too much to the right, you can go too much to the left, right? But it is important to realize that we can't escape this. We are biased, and because this is how we structure our minds. This is how we make a decision, right? The ultimate form of, you might say, and we've gotten some examples of the latest couple of weeks on bad types of discrimination, right? Of people who think other people are so bad or evil or not welcome that they should be exterminated, okay? But again, it's not the first time we've seen it in history, and it happens. It's on that side of the spectrum, right? It's an extreme right right ideology kind of thing, okay? But there's also an extreme left, and it's something that it's very important, especially in this day and age, to know that both extremes are kind of they're opposites, but they lead to the same kind of mess, let's say. Okay, so we are biased, and we will always discriminate, no matter what, because we have to. The ultimate act of bias, or the ultimate act of discrimination, is when you decide to share your life, or even share some time with someone, right? When you say, I'm going to choose this person over all the other people that I could have, or that I could date, or that I could marry, or that I could go out with, or that I could have a friendship with, okay? And so that is the ultimate act of discrimination. You say, look, all these other people, no, I choose you, and I'm going to spend time with you. I'm going to take a trip with you. I'm going to share this piece of my finite existence with you. Again, there I go, getting philosophical, but it's a bias, right? You don't just kind of wonder, right? You choose, and in so choosing, and in the filtration, in the cutting off of all the other options, is where you can structure then your life. The top of my pyramid is money, or the top of my pyramid is fame, or all of that. And then I think Jim Carrey has a really great quote. He says that I wish that more people, or everyone, could be rich and famous, and then so that they could realize that that's not even it, right? So anyways, that's what bias maps are. We have we talk about bias maps in our book. So again, it says Position to Win, but we're thinking about changing the name to Most Businesses Fail in 5 minutes, because everybody's loving in the first 5 minutes, because everybody's loving that tagline. So we're thinking about switching it. Position to Win is a system that we, I wouldn't say created or put together, that's a system really of attack, of integration, of really any business idea, or for your career, also your personal positioning. Where so if you want to get information about that, then definitely go to positiontowinbook.com and put your email there, and you'll be notified about the official release of the book. Also, another note, we're going to be doing an event in October 20th through the 23rd, and it's a 4-day event. The first day we're going to talk about personal positioning. The second day we're going to talk about positioning a business or idea or a product. The third day we're going to be doing some breakdown. We're basically going to break down. I think we have we're doing 7 people, but we already have 1 taken, so we have 6 slots remaining for basically we're going to break. I think we have 2 slots taken, so we only have 5. We're going to break the business all the way down and put it back together, and then the 4th day we're going to have basically a master pitch, and again it's only going to be for 5 people remaining. Yeah, I think so, for 5. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to, this is mostly, John would be doing this, the person would be delivering the master pitch of the business or the idea, and then John will give the pitch back to them and kind of tell them their pitch, and then they're going to have some feedback, and then they're going to do it again, and then we're going to do some other testimonial stuff after the fact. So it's very, everybody gets 75 minutes. We hit the clock and we go. So that is October. You can find information about that on positiontowinbook.com too. It says Position to Win event in Vegas, and that's in October. So yep, bias maps are very important. Figure out what your bias map is. Figure out what the person's that you're trying to influence bias map is, what is important to them, not to manipulate them obviously, right, but to be able to figure out how you slot yourself in so that you are a little different, you can stand out, and they can take notice of what is it that you're doing.